Hey, Jody here with weldingtipsandtricks.com. In just a minute we're going to talk about all kinds of different TIG torches, but first let me give you a little background on myself and my experience with TIG torches. I started out of welding school working with the Boilermakers and then the Pipe Fitters Union. It was pretty much all scratch start 17 or 26 air-cooled torch with a valve. For the most part, with the exception of one nuclear plant where they actually relocated a welding power source for you with foot pedal, high freak start, water cooler, and all that, which is pretty amazing that they did that, but they did. I remember having a big old Hobart Cyber TIG the size of a refrigerator. It was great to be able to do that, but then after that, all air-cooled scratch start. So I spent about 13 years welding pipe with an air-cooled 17 or a 26, depending on the job, whatever they gave you, that's what you had. But then after that, I went into a whole different industry, aerospace maintenance and repair. All the torches were water-cooled. They were all everything was really small. I went from using 1/8 filler rod to using 0.30 filler rod. And so everything got smaller, and it felt really nice having that little small water-cooled TIG torch in my hand, which was a number 20 style TIG torch. Along the way somewhere I decided to set up shop on my own, so I bought my own welder. The first one was a Synchrowave 250 with a Dynaflux cooler on the top, WP20 Weldcraft water-cooled torch, 25 footer. Then when I sold that and bought a Dynasty inverter, I went with a number 9 torch because of the work I was doing at the time. Seemed like it would take care of it. Well, I got some heavier work and I smoked that torch, so then I had to get a water cooler. Then I bought a Coolmate cooler and set up a 25-foot CK water-cooled torch, CK20. So I said all that to say this: I've got a pretty good idea of TIG torches now after all that history. I'm a CK distributor now, so I got some samples of them that I'm going to show you in a minute. Also, WeldTech distributor now. I'm going to be offering some TIG torches on the Weldmonger store. And after this video is over, I would love for you to just make a comment on if one of these torches caught your eye and you think you might be interested in it. Leave a comment and the make and model of the machine that you use. That will help me out a whole bunch, because I don't want to stock 50 TIG torches. I want to get the 3 or 4 that are the most useful, best value, and that I have used before and proven out. Okay, but so before we get into that, I've talked a whole lot here, bumped my gums a lot. Let's show some actual welding here so we can break up the monotony a little bit. Okay, this is a perfect example of where you would want to use a water-cooled torch. I've shown this little clip several times, but I had about 20 of these to weld, and they're really thick 4140 steel, and I welded about 160 amps. So back to back, one after another, and I would have had to use a huge 26 air-cooled torch and just wouldn't have been very comfortable, and even that would have started to get warm, whereas this flex lock torch with water-cooled didn't get warm at all. So it was a 2-pass weld because I needed to get about a 5/16 leg size on it, and I just camped out on these things, banged them out in one day, and couldn't have done that with an air-cooled torch. Now there's one weld that I was doing just for kicking around here on a big chunk of stainless steel, and I was only down around 130 amps. So I use this one of my least favorite torches here. This is a 26 air-cooled, like a Trafomet style torch with a torch switch on it, and I do have a Stubby gas lens kit on it, which makes it a whole lot better, but still the torch itself just doesn't feel all that great. But it's a 200 amp torch, an air-cooled 26. Alright, this HTP 221 amp welder came with a CK 17 air-cooled torch, and I had a job of 1-inch thick aluminum, 1-inch solid aluminum, no preheat. I did have helium mixed in there, but the reason I was able to get by using this 17 air-cooled on something this thick was just its short runs. I only welded an inch or two at a time and then had to reposition, and then there was time to fixture in between parts because it took a lot of fixturing to get it just at the right angles. So, you know, even though I was up at max power, 220 amps, I was only welding for an inch or two at a time, and the torch never really did get all that warm. Now this is a number 26 air-cooled torch, welding some socket welds here. I did quite a while back. I was actually making a chin-up bar. But just to make things interesting, I used socket welds to do it with, and so that did fine. That was a 26 with a torch switch on it. Here's a number 9 with a torch switch, and This will get hot on you real quick, but see, I was only using maybe 60 or 70 amps here, just doing these little fusion welds here on the tubing, welding inside a bracket on this handle that goes on a cart. So didn't really require any filler metal, didn't require much amperage, so a number 9 air-cooled torch worked out just fine for this little job. Did a little video a while back about welding some thin wall aluminum tubing using the torch switch, and I was just pulsing with the torch switch. That's a little Angry Mosquito third hand hold down thing I built, but I use a number 20 water cooled here, not because I needed the amperage, just because I had that hooked up with a torch switch on it, and I wanted to do a little experimenting with pulsing using the switch with just a little bit of downslope. So I would hit the trigger, and I had the downslope set for about 3 seconds, and then before it would completely downslope, I would hit the trigger again, and it wound up making for a decent manual pulse situation. But number 20 torch, 250 amps, I was probably only welding 70 or 80 amps there, using that again, using the torch switch, on-off switch, just to manually pulse. Now sometimes when I do videos, I don't pick my favorite torch. I pick a torch that somebody might be forced to use. So there's that old CK 210 amp air-cooled scratch start rig, and I'm doing some sanitary 2-inch tubing here, just no filler metal, just doing a little technique, making little tiny circles, and I'm a little hot. You'll see toward the end I'm just a little bit hot, but it did penetrate and was fairly uniform. It's just that it would have looked a lot better as far as discoloration, and I backed off just 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 amps. But I'm using that big torch again with the Stubby gas lens kit, and so it's a lot more maneuverable than it would have been without it with the standard cup on there. It's a big torch, big heavy torch, big heavy cables. But like I said, just a little hot, but I got a really good purge, good penetration. Now here I'm using the Flex Lock from CK, the air-cooled version. So it's kind of a 17 style torch handle with a valve on it, and the valve is actually that red thing that's it twists actually to turn the argon on and off. But I'm putting a root pass here and a 6-inch pipe using a little lay wire forward and back technique, and that works out pretty good for me. Now you can see that little red thing with the ribs on it. That's actually the valve. You just turn it a few degrees one way or another, and it turns the argon on and off. But I free-handed the first pass here because I went straight forward and back, and then walked the cup on the second pass, also called the hot pass. Okay, this is the job that killed my little 9 air-cooled Miller Diamondback. Actually, this is not the first series of these that I did. I just kept doing these jobs like this where I would really push the limits, and it finally just wound up breaking the rubber down, and it split, and it just was no good anymore. And plus, while I was doing these jobs, the torch would get so hot in my hand that I would just have to lay it down after a while, and that slowed me down, so I didn't like that. But, that's me pushing the limits on an air-cooled number 9 rated for 125 amps, and I was at probably 150 amps for long durations. Okay, well, I've shown you several jobs using a 9, a 17, a 20, a 26, all kinds of different configurations and different brands of torches, and hopefully it wasn't too random. But if you stick with me here in just a minute, we're going to talk about all kinds of different number torches, explain how water-cooled torches work, talk about specialty torches like micro torches. Here we go. This video is about TIG torches. I got a whole bunch of them because there's so many available. There's air-cooled, water-cooled, big ones, little ones, specialty micro torches, pencil torches, and even some new ones that are brand new on the market that you probably haven't even seen yet. So we're going to talk about that today, and let's go. The numbering system for torches is all jacked up. There's a number 9 air-cooled torch. That's a nice small little air-cooled torch, and its water-cooled version is a 20, not a 9W. So the air-cooled versions are typically 9, 17, and 26. 17 probably is the most popular all around, and then for water-cooled you got 20, and then there's 18, which is a really big torch. Lots of other numbers that have come on the scene since then. SW320 from WeldTech, WP280 from Weldcraft, etc. So, clearing up some confusion, I had a question on YouTube about where's the air supply for an air-cooled torch. Well, all air-cooled means is not water-cooled, basically, so it just cools either from the ambient air around it or actually the argon flowing around the cable. So let's get a close-up view of the two different styles of air-cooled torches, where one's got a 2 cable and one has got a single cable. Okay, this is it's a CK brand torch, and I've had it for over 35 years. I don't know how old it was when I got it. This is a CK 210. It's sort of like a 26. It's an air-cooled torch, and it's huge. It is like the size of a chipping hammer. I never have liked it. It's got actually a number 2 welding cable on it here, which is really heavy, and then a separate argon line. So this is a 2 cable style air-cooled torch with a valve. Okay, valve being for when you're welding with just a scratch start rig. You have no solenoid in the machine, so you just turn the argon on and off. This is a newer version, a 17 here, a lower amperage torch, but it's got a nice flex cable, a single cable, so the argon flows around a power cable that's inside here, and it helps to cool it a little bit, not a lot, because it's just not that much flow of argon coming through there. So technically, I think even like companies like CK are referring to these as gas-cooled and not air-cooled. Okay, another area of confusion that I've seen some questions on is people talking about water-cooled TIG machines. Can I hook up a torch to this machine even though it's not a water-cooled machine? Well, the term water-cooled machine is kind of a misnomer. It's kind of misleading because it's the torch that's water-cooled, not the machine. So basically, let me show you a close-up here of a torch, the 3 hoses that go in a torch, and then also I've got a cutaway of what the inside of a water-cooled torch looks like so you can understand how the water flows through it and cools it. Okay, this is a CK20, a number 20 water-cooled torch. It's the same size as this little CK9. It would be really hard to tell them apart if you didn't take them apart and see which one was water-cooled. 9, 20. But this is water-cooled. The torch is water-cooled, so basically this is where the power cable hooks in. It's got the water running around it. So water comes in here and circulates around the head and then back out one of these lines. So it's just a loop. It's a loop of flowing water, and it flows through the TIG cooler, which usually either just has enough volume to cool, or it's got a heat exchanger, a little small radiator in it, and that's really all there is to it. It doesn't cool the machine down, just cools the torch down. So you can take any TIG welder and add a water cooler to it, because you're just cooling the TIG torch, not the machine. Now let's get a close-up here of this. This is a cutaway. You can see the little hollow chamber in there that's been manufactured into this head. This is an older model Weldcraft brand. Okay, this is a Weldcraft, this is a CK. So you can see one of them is a small piece of copper tubing that's been brazed in there, and one of them has a much larger water jacket that's included. So my thinking is the CK is going to cool better than this Weldcraft here because of the larger water jacket. Makes sense. So here's an example of one that I just snipped because the power cable that's inside here had corroded anyway, and that's what happens if you run tap water through and this one was hooked up to a line just running on city water, which is not all that uncommon. This is at a previous place of employment, and that's the way they did it, and they would burn a torch up about every year because of all the chlorine and stuff in the water. So anyway, the power cable is relatively small. This is a 250 amp torch, but that power cable is only about 1/8 of an inch in diameter, but there's water running around it or coolant running around it, so it doesn't have to be very big. And that's why if you forget to turn your cooler on, you will smoke a torch like this and nothing flat, because that little small cable just can't handle much amperage at all before it gets red hot and burns a hole in the water line. All right, one of these other lines is water, and the other one is your shielding gas. All a water-cooled TIG welder setup is a cooler that circulates coolant or water up and through the head of the TIG torch, and then back around and through the heat exchanger, and then loops it back around. Okay, I'm trying to make this as organized as possible, but the way that the numbering systems and everything are so janked up with TIG torches, I think I'm just going to go over air-cooled and the numbers there, and then go to water-cooled, and then maybe also compare the two, like compare the 9 to the 20, even though one's water-cooled and one's air-cooled. So let's take a look now at some of the most commonly used air-cooled TIG torches. Okay, this is a number 9 TIG torch, a CK9 RG. The RG stands for rigid, not a flex head. Now this uses the small style hardware. Like I say small because it's way smaller than the other stuff. Way smaller than this. So this is what I call small, this is big. Some call it 200 series and 300 series, but you know that varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. So this is the small style hardware that fits a 9. It also fits the water-cooled 20. This stuff fits the big air-cooled torches and the big water-cooled torches, the torches like 17, 18, and 26. I also use a gas lens type setup like this, which requires a gas lens collet body with diffuser lenses, diffuser screens in there, and a gas lens cup that fits that. And a 7 is a really good all-around size that handles most jobs. Okay, again, this is a 9, but the only drawback here, it's simple, it's air-cooled, doesn't require all the expense of a water cooler, but it only is good for up to 125 amps. You can't go much higher than that. You can go all the way up. I've done it anyway. I've gone as high as 200, and I've also burned them up. But the problem is they just get hot in your hand. If you're just doing lots of work where you don't let the torch rest a lot, it's going to get hot. That's a problem. Okay, now going upward, there's a 17 style, 17V FX. The V stands for valve. That's an argon valve on here, which you need if you're doing scratch start. And the FX stands for flex. Now again, this uses the big style hardware. You can take any torch like this and make it much better by putting a stubby gas lens on it. This is a 17 torch also that came with the Lincoln Square Wave TIG 175 unit. Not a bad little torch, feels pretty good, but it feels a whole lot better now that look how I shrunk it down, and also get much better gas shielding here. So there is an alternative to these big torches where you can kind of get the best of both worlds. This handles 150 amps, but it's kind of big, but you can shrink it down with the stubby gas lens. This is a Trimline 26. Now normally 26 torches are much bigger than this. This isn't any bigger than the 17 and is good for 200 amps. So something to think about if you are doing air-cooled high amperage like up to around 200 amp work is get a Trimline 26. And again, you can put the stubby gas lens on here and you really don't have a bad setup. I just threw this in here because this is the water-cooled version of the 26 and 18, and it's huge. See, I got the three lines here, the water and power here, and then water and gas here, and it's just a big torch that I wouldn't want to use unless I had to. This is what I mean by a big 26 as being really big. This is a 26 that came with a thermal arc fabricator. And it's kind of like, I don't know if they call this European style, Trafomet style, but I don't really care for it, like at all. But it's what comes with a lot of machines. You can see the difference. Both of them same amperage carrying capacity. This is much easier to hold for me. Let's talk about some water-cooled TIG torches. And when I say water, again, it's usually either distilled water with some type of additive, some type of inhibitor, corrosion inhibitor. I've had some RV coolant in a cooler now for about 3 years and haven't had any issues there. Okay, water-cooled TIG torches. The main one that I've used for years is a 20, and often referred to as a WP20. And I think that WP is a Weldcraft. It stands for Weldcraft product or something like that because CK's got the CK20 and you know. But anyway, a 20 style torch, again, is the same size as the 9, but the number 9 air-cooled is only good for 125 amps. The number 20 water-cooled, 250 amps. If you get a water cooler, the great thing about it is you're pretty much covered. You're pretty much going to, no matter, it's a small torch, you can get in tight spots. There are lots of different options available for water-cooled TIG torches. And even the smallest ones like this 20 typically are good up to 250 amps. There are small ones like this that still use the small style hardware, good for over 300 amps. And that's going to take care of most people's needs. All right, let's talk about some specialty torches now. As I said, there's torches for all kinds of applications. For example, if I had to weld this to a plate and get down and weld inside there, and I needed like 150 or so amps, this is a water-cooled torch that'll handle that easily. I can stick that down in there and make the weld. Otherwise, it would be very difficult. For getting in tight spots, this is particular torch is an air-cooled, but there's water-cooled versions of this. This is a 24 style, and there's water-cooled versions. They don't call them 24, but they use the same hardware here. So there's no back cap and a very low profile here for just getting up in very tight areas. Same thing with this. This is a little micro torch, uses a little Pyrex cup for, welding up, maybe up inside a small tube. This is WeldTech's roto head of the I-head series, and basically you can get any torch angle here, but not just that. The cool thing about this is not only can you get any torch angle for welding, a lap joint that's away from you, or almost a straight on, almost like as good as a pencil torch. But the cool thing about this is, I can, if I'm 1 minute I'm welding some thin aluminum with a cup like this and a 1/16 electrode, all I have to do is unscrew this. Now I'm going up to a much heavier electrode with a gas lens for maybe, walking the cup on pipe or something, and all I have to do is swap one off, and I can keep these already made up. Cup, tungsten, everything all tightened up. Boom. Now I'm ready to do something completely different, and that didn't take me any time at all, hardly.
So right now I've got about a number 5 white lava nozzle on there, and I'm messing around with the torch angle, and I can get any angle I want, and I mess around with it until I get one that's really good. It keeps it pointed as I rotate up there. I want to keep the torch angle, the tungsten angle, the electrode angle pointed toward the center of the tube, and that's not that easy to do. So every time I dip the rod here, I'm going to have to rotate the torch a little bit. If I forget to do that, easy to get a wacky torch angle. So each time I dip, I'm kind of rotating my wrist and turning the torch angle just a little bit to keep that electrode pointed toward the center of the tube so I don't get too much torch angle. And having that torch adjustable like it is really helps that. Now, also on walking the cup like this on something flat, you can see I've got quite a torch angle. Most even flex heads don't bend quite that much without a lot of trouble. But for walking the cup on something flat, it's kind of what's needed. Otherwise you have to turn the torch sideways. So I'm at 170 amps right now, walking the cup on some high strength steel using a 309 1/8 inch filler wire. And I was able to do that because I was able to swap heads on this torch in like less than a minute.
This is one of the cooler torches I've seen, the most innovative torch I've seen in a long time. All right, this is from WeldTech also, and this is called a Stubby torch. Now, I've talked about the Stubby gas lens. I don't know where the word Stubby came from, but I like it. Anyway, the Stubby gas lens shortens up this part of the torch and provides you a gas lens, okay? What the Stubby torch does, it's stubby. It's not only short this way, it's very short this way. And so most of the torch handle can actually flex and get in some really tight spots. Now the reason you can do that is because the cable basically goes all the way up into the torch head. Okay, so I've got a nice flexible cable here. This is a number 9 style torch head, so it's a 125 amp rated torch head. If I'm welding 1 minute on some really thin wall tubing, like a bicycle frame or something like that, at 30, 40 amps tops, and by the way, this is going to be awesome for bicycle builders. But if I'm welding 1 minute there, low amperage, and the next minute I need to just swap off, maybe I'm going to weld some titanium or something. Same thing as with this as with that torch I just showed you a minute ago. Pop this off and pop another one on, and you keep this already all set up, tungsten and everything in there, finger tight. Now I'm ready to weld some titanium tubing and get a big coverage area for that. So it's going to take a whole nother video to cover things like monster nozzles and what TIG cup would you use for what situation. But let me just say this for now. a number 7 gas lens or a 6, 7, or an 8 will get you where you want to be on most things. Now, if you're all concerned about color, like on the Cup Wars on Instagram, welding, turbocharger stuff, and for Mitsubishi Evos, and you're all concerned about the least little bit of discoloration, this won't get it. But if you're just building stuff, you want to make a good sound weld with good gas coverage, a number 7 gas lens will take care of about 90% of anything you want to do, along with a 3/32 2% lanthanated electrode, 17 torch with a stubby kit, and all that, and you're going to be good to go on most jobs.
All right, well, that wraps it up for this week. Most videos I do aren't quite this long, but there was just a lot of material to cover. So if you like what you see here, hit that subscribe button and hit that thumbs up button also if you like what you're seeing, and we'll see you next week.